it's 6:03, and it's a meeting of the Harwich Community Preservation Committee, and it's located in the Don B. Griffin Room, Harwich Town Hall, 732 Main Street, Harwich, Mass, at 6 a.m. It is Thursday, 6 p.m. I'm on the wrong
I'm not a morning person.
airline time. Anyway, Thursday, January 5th, 2023. Okay, this is the call to order. Is there anybody from the general public that would like to speak? Hearing none, moving on. We don't have any minutes for this meeting. The minutes will be at the next meeting. So, can we start with new business? And we're gonna do, it's OS1 Bells Neck Road, Herring River Land Preservation Project. Would you please introduce yourself, sir? And you've got the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, members of the Community Preservation Committee.
Either or.
Here? Okay.
Yeah.
Happy New Year, and thank you for the flexibility in scheduling, moving the time for this review to this evening from December 15th. I very much appreciate that. Hope everybody's doing well. I serve as Executive Director of the nonprofit Harwich Conservation Trust, Michael Locke. It's your local land trust, founded in 1988 by citizens from all walks of life for the common purpose of preserving land to protect water quality, habitat, scenic views, trails, all those environmental values that we hold dear here in town. Keeps us coming back, holds us here as well in town. We've partnered many times on land preservation projects that benefit the citizens and visitors to Harwich. And we're excited about the opportunity to partner again with your consideration first of this proposal for the Bells Neck Road Herring River Land Preservation Project. You've been able to read the application. I'm going to summarize the land acquisition proposal structure, and then some of the environmental benefits of acquiring this land for preservation, and then glad to answer any questions.
Before you go any further, Michael, would you please give us the amount of money, that's my fault, the amount requested for this?
Yes. The amount requested from the open space funding portion of the Community Preservation Fund is $125,000.
Thank you.
Yes. Mr. Chair, may I circulate a color copy of attachment 10, which was part of the original proposal, to your members?
Go ahead.
Okay.
Thanks, Michael.
This aerial photo really says it all in terms of its environmental context, this particular property. So in summary, it's a 2.87 acre property with approximately 782 feet of frontage on Bells Neck Road and more than 1,180 feet of salt marsh shoreline within the Herring River estuary. The outline of the proposed land acquisition structure is as follows. The proposed acquisition in terms of the purchase would be by Harwich Conservation Trust. The total project goal is $325,000, which includes the land purchase cost of $311,500. And we're asking you, as members of the CPC, to recommend this as a town meeting warrant article for voter consideration this May for $125,000 toward this land preservation project. And the town would receive a permanent conservation restriction over the land. That conservation restriction to be held by the Town Conservation Commission, as has customarily been done when we partner in this fashion to preserve land to protect a number of natural resources. So I'll summarize the environmental benefits that we envision happening through this land preservation project. Looking at the aerial photo, you can see the land's proximity to the Herring River. and a significant amount of salt marsh shoreline. It's a 2.87 acre property with that forested road frontage on Bells Neck Road. Bells Neck Road, a very scenic public road in town. In effect, a sort of a southerly gateway when you're heading north from 28 on Bells Neck Road into Bells Neck proper, Bells Neck Conservation Land proper. This holds about, it's over 2.5 lengths of a football field or soccer field, if you're a World Cup fan, worth of road frontage on that very scenic road. As you saw in one of the attachments in the application, this property has been through Town Conservation Commission permitting process, and more than half of that road frontage would be cleared if this was to be developed. We know that the Herring River is a nitrogen-sensitive estuary per the town's comprehensive wastewater management plan. Extinguishing a septic system from being installed on this property would help protect the water quality of the Herring River and Nantucket Sound downstream into which it flows, and of course the wildlife, including the river herring that migrate each spring up through the Herring River into West Reservoir and the spawning ponds to the north. So we have a scenic value benefit, we have a water quality benefit, we have a wildlife habitat benefit. There also happens to be Town Conservation Commission controlled land with an 1800s era cemetery adjacent and to the south. So we have a historical protection, I'll say, buffering aspect to this project as well. And what I did was, prior to December 1st, I included some supplemental information, which included letters of support from the Town Conservation Commission, Real Estate and Open Space Committee, the town's water, wastewater superintendent, and the Director of Natural Resources also. And I also included an appraisal. The land appraised at $315,000. As I mentioned, the contracted purchase price was $311,500. So we're within the $315,000 appraised fair market value. When we factor in project costs, including HCT's due diligence, closing costs, fundraising, our total project goal is $325,000. So $125,000 positive recommendation by the CPC, advancing to May town meeting, hopefully a positive vote by town meeting voters, would really go a long way towards moving this $325,000 project forward. So I'm glad and eager to answer any questions.
Okay, I'm going to open it up to the board, but I'm going to ask the first question. So on your sheet you just handed us, the red circle, what is to the right of it? Is that a vehicle?
It's a house.
Thanks for the question. It's a house. There's a few houses on Bells Neck Road, on the east and west sides of Bells Neck Road, to the north of this property before you cross the Bells Neck Road Bridge, which is off to the right out of the photo frame.
Okay, that's Elizabeth.
Thank you. Question, where will the other 200,000 come from, and why aren't you asking us for that?
Yes, we try to stretch funding as much as possible, including public funds. So we take it this very seriously, raising the funds, looking to a variety of sources. We have a number of other land protection fundraising projects in process. We are looking towards a potential application to the state's Conservation Partnership Grant Program. We think this would be a competitive candidate. So we would apply for some of the difference between 325,000 and 325,000 and 125,000 CPA open space funding. And then we would look to our HCT community, citizens, visitors to Harwich, which support these kinds of land protection, water protection efforts to raise the balance.
Great, thanks.
All set, Elizabeth?
Yes.
Carol?
I'm fine, thank you.
John?
Yeah, so just following up on Elizabeth's question, what are your fundraising deadlines?
Yes.
Good.
Our fundraising deadline for this is December 31st, 2023, so this year. Yeah, so we have a full year to raise these funds.
So, my understanding about this particular property is that it is undisturbed and as a target for preservation is an excellent target. I'm just wondering if you have, and it's undisturbed and there's very little invasive or foreign plant material in there, which is pretty unusual. A lot of that gets introduced at disturbed locations. I'm wondering if you could say a little bit about how much more of land of that quality is unclaimed or undeveloped in Harwich at this point. Do you have any notion about that?
That's hard to quantify, but I want to echo your observation that the native plant community is intact on this property, and there are very few, if any, non-native invasive species, which is unusual.
Thank you.
Well said, John. Mary?
So, I'm just trying to get my bearings. I'm looking to the far left, the spire, to the far left, that's the Baptist church, correct?
Yes.
Okay. So, for HCT, I know you said if it was developed through the permitting that's pre-existing at conservation, some of the vegetation that's there would be removed. What's HCT's plan for? Is it to remain exactly as it is? Would you be putting in, would you anticipate putting in any paths or walkways or anything like that?
At the moment, the near-term goal is for habitat preservation. There is not at the moment a plan for a path on the property. I think the public scenic value is enjoyed mostly by folks traveling Bells Neck Road.
All right.
Yeah.
All I had.
Okay.
Carol?
Thank you, Mike, for your application. So tagging on with Elizabeth and John, are you typically successful in community fundraising for projects like this with the balance that you have?
Yeah, thanks for asking. We thanks to the generosity of so many, both individuals, families, businesses, foundations, we have been successfully. Look at these each on a case-by-case basis. Folks recognize the value of preserving these lands while we still have a chance. I'm cautiously optimistic that we'll meet this goal, especially if there's a town contribution that really energizes attention towards this effort.
Thank you. That's all.
Robert?
Just really kind of, I had the same question as Mary about any, you don't have any plans for a little parking area or anything that someone could pull in and just enjoy the view?
Not in the near term, as I mentioned to Mary, so it doesn't discount longer term. What does that look like? What does the time frame? We have multiple land preservation projects underway, as well as some significant land stewardship efforts. So that's where our focus is right now in terms of enhancing public access to trails and vistas. This property at the moment, as it sits, isn't ready to go in terms of offering a trail opportunity out to the marsh. We would have to go through, just as any applicant would or owner, permitting through the Town Conservation Commission process. That's not where we're focusing our attention at this time. But we'll leave that option open for the future.
Yeah, it just seems like whenever we use town money, or from CPA money, that usually we do ask for some kind of public access of some form, and that's why I bring it up.
Sure, I appreciate that.
Isn't,
All set, Robin?
Yes.
Elizabeth, I'll come back. I want to get to Kathy first. Sorry.
Okay. Well, speaking as a representative of real estate and open space, I visited the site with the committee. And as you can see from the attachment 3, Conservation Commission really worked hard to, protect the wetlands and, sort of really carve out the only possible space for development. And it's really all along the wood side, which would really destroy the vista of that particular road. And it's not really that conducive for, like sightseeing, so to speak. Yeah, it really isn't. And remember, I'm sure everybody does, because we've discussed it before, but conservation restriction that the town would be getting is basically a legal document that extinguishes development rights, correct?
Yes.
Okay. Doesn't necessarily guarantee public access or anything like that. We would love that, but that's not necessarily always the be-all, end-all.
And there can be provision in those conservation restrictions to allow public access implementation in the future, but it does extinguish all other forms, most other forms of residential commercial development.
And real estate and open space was unanimously in favor of supporting this. That's it.
Okay, so my question would be, thank you, Kathy. As far as recreational use is concerned, is that something that you would make a construct and put inside the usage of that property? I mean, it's not just there to,
Oh, in the conservation restriction?
yeah,
Yes, I think, well, there's a set of, so essentially, just by way of background, a conservation restriction is a legal agreement such that the grantor and grantee agree that some or all of the development rights is extinguished on some or all of a piece of property. It depends. Conservation restriction could be overlaid on a house that has, on a property that has a house but has enough residual land for further subdivision. A conservation restriction can be overlaid on a completely vacant, in real estate terms, property like this in its natural state. So when we're looking at it from that perspective, the conservation restriction would look to keep it in its natural condition. And one of the reserved rights can be for trail access, typically with an unpaved surface. So you've got a pervious surface for precipitation. It's in the watershed. And typically not more than 4 to 6 feet in width. So that's a term that we typically see as a reserve right within a conservation restriction to enable the exercising the option of maintaining or creating public access through a walking trail in the future. So that kind of language can be included in the conservation restriction to allow that option in the future. Again, there are no immediate near-term plans to put a trail in place.
all right, so you know where I'm trying to get to.
Please.
Is there a way, is there a mechanism that the conservation restriction on this particular property, as it's written today or tomorrow or the next day, can include access to the general public for use, for recreational use?
Yeah, it's on a public roadway, so it's by virtue of its location along a public roadway, there's public access. You
What I'm
could,
looking for is the language.
sure, we can include that as we have typically in a reserve right with a conservation restriction that the grantor has the right to create walking trail access.
Kathy?
Do you know if the cemetery that's there now, which is a very small cemetery, is maintained by the town, and is there sort of a public walkway to the cemetery?
Yes, there is. There's it's, geez, probably 20 feet off the road, and there is, it's a fairly open understory, and one can walk right from Bell's Neck Road to the cemeteries. There are 3 grave sites there.
I never knew
This
there
is-
was a cemetery.
It's very small.
very
And it's a very
interesting,
long,
yeah.
skinny piece of property here. It really impacts the vista of that street more than anything else. It's not really providing a ton of trails or access
Okay.
to the water. It's
Well, I'm just
strictly
looking at-
Just a buffer.
the preservation of the vista.
As may I?
Go ahead.
As Kathy is describing, and as John mentioned, it's an intact, native plant community. It's pretty thick, buffering wetland vegetative cover. And so in that respect, it's great wildlife habitat, not much disturbance. So we don't see non-native invasive species taking over the property. So it's in great native habitat condition, and that, as much as possible, would be our goal to protect, with the allowance in the future, as resources allow, if it's deemed the decision at that time to put a trail in. But we would have the right under the conservation restriction.
Okay, I'm not necessarily hammering the idea of the trail.
Oh.
What I'm thinking of is people who are, there seems to be a swell of people that bird watch.
Oh, sure.
So do
Yeah.
they have is there enough access down there for them to
Yes,
do their
yes.
recreational?
You could walk right along Bell's Neck Road, and there's enough open understory that you could walk into that, what is shown as proposed house site.
Okay, fair enough. Anything else from any member of the board? Robert?
Yeah, again, along the same lines, I wasn't really thinking of a walking path as much as what you did in West Harwich behind the post office, of having a platform, and then a bird watcher, anybody can go up and sit and watch the thing. That's what I think would be very appropriate for that area.
Right, like a path to a viewing deck.
Yes.
Out to the marsh. Yeah, so we can allow for that in the conservation restriction. And as resources and interests allow in the future, then that could be a public access action. But right now, because of the time and cost in creating that kind of structure within the 100-foot jurisdiction of the Conservation Commission, that is not our focus at the moment.
Okay, I'm sorry. Elizabeth, go ahead.
Thank you. I just, looking at this, and I do Bell's Neck an awful lot. I love
Yeah.
it there. Don't I get this view from somewhere else? It looks familiar to me. Isn't this sort of accessible from,
That's a good question, Elizabeth. The Bells Neck Road Bridge is up to the north, again, of the right side off the photo frame. If you were at the North Road Bridge, you'd be kind of looking across the marsh plain, but there's also, as you see in the bottom part of this aerial photo, there are these sort of upland islands surrounded by marsh and the river. So I don't know that you'd have necessarily an unobstructed view from the North Road Bridge. You probably catch a portion of this at that distance, just because of the more than 1,100 feet, 1,180 feet of salt marsh shoreline. So that's my best answer to your question.
thank you.
Certainly by kayak, canoe,
Yeah.
you get a good view. Yeah,
Exactly.
yeah.
John?
Yeah, I wanted to chime in with a somewhat contrary point of view, which is that I think one of the most important things we can do in Harwich is preserve pristine habitat for native species. And I'm less concerned about the recreational value here, much more concerned that nothing gets done on this site that would disturb whoever lives there. And yes, the Conservation Commission did eventually approve building plans here. I don't think many people were all that happy about it, but we did that. I think this is a much better solution, much better use of this, and I'm not inclined to emphasize there has to be any appurtenances there for public access. I think the important thing here is preserving a little corner of the town for habitat, because it's all disappearing far too rapidly. Thank you.
You're welcome, John. I'm debating whether I'm gonna spar with him. Kelly, you have the floor.
My comment is similar to John's. Thank you for bringing that up. I've found that there's public benefit beyond just direct access to the public, preserving land for the benefit of wildlife habitat that people enjoy, for the benefit of flood mitigation, water quality. There's a lot of public benefits that just straight preservation supports. So I just ask that everyone keep that in mind as well.
Okay, is there anything else from the board? Any board member would like to speak? Thank you, sir, for your presentation.
Thank you all very much. Great conversation, questions. Appreciate your consideration.
All right, moving on. Next, the follow-up discussion with BAMC Chair David Spitz.
Hello again.
So this is about H4, Brooks Academy Exterior Preservation Project, and H5, Brooks Academy Windows Restoration Project. You have the floor, sir.
I do not have much to add. You asked to have the projects combined, so we have. I originally asked for 240 plus 250 plus 440. I did notice that the architect's numbers in the presentation to you last time did not exactly match my numbers, so I've gone back over and can explain any of that to you. But basically, by doing the combination, we indicated a small savings of $5,000 in combined staging and protection. We indicated a small combination savings of $5,000 in carpentry, repairs, etc. And we offset that by increasing the contingency. And that's where the numbers get a little wonky. I said from 10% to 20%. If you go back through the numbers, if they were consistent the first time, the increase would have actually been from 15% to 20%. So we didn't choose to stay at 15%, which would have given you a slightly lower number. We chose to go back to the previous total with a 20% contingency, and Elizabeth will be glad to give you the money back if we don't need it. And David, that's all I got, and I'm glad to do the best I can to answer any questions, though if you get into the details of the project, we're gonna have to hear from Lynn Spencer again, who I can reach but could not get here tonight.
Okay, so, Carol.
Thank you. Thank you, David. So just to clarify, so there's no, I think one of the motivations for requesting the combined proposal was the potential for cost savings. But essentially by identifying modest cost savings and increasing the contingency, we're really coming up flush.
Yeah,
So,
I could show a 15% contingency, but I'm not sure that's a wise move.
okay, great, thank you.
Also, Carol. Mary.
So I kind of had the same reaction that Carol did. I guess I was hopeful that we'd come back with a smaller number so that we could, have more play to work with. I guess my question is really more a legal one from the perspective of whether we keep it combined or whether we keep it separate. I think combined, as long as it's written this way, is probably still the better route to go, because then cost savings in, if one area, if windows come out less painting comes out more, it's under the same article, shouldn't have an issue, whereas I think if they're separate articles, we end up, you can't cross articles once town meeting approval happens. So despite the lack of a cost saving that I was looking for, I still think perhaps this might be the better route to go.
Do you understand that, as far as town meeting is concerned?
I think so.
Okay, all right. Just wanted to make sure.
So despite all of it, I think I might still prefer to vote for it as one larger article and hope that town meeting supports it.
Okay, thank you, Mary. Elizabeth?
I agree with Mary. I really want this to pass town meeting, and the minute you have two articles, then people start thinking, well, maybe I'll do this one, I'll approve this one, but not that one, and I just think, I think we'll have there'd be a better shot of getting it passed at town meeting if it's one article. And also, like Mary said, I think it was this year that somebody had to give back money that we're now going to give them again because they wanted to take, I think it was the pond, wasn't it? It was for a pond. And they wanted to take the money to use it on something else in the pond, and it turned out they couldn't because, so I think combining the two is our best bet.
All right. Thank you, Elizabeth. Robert?
Yeah, I just want to report that David did come before the Historical Commission and Historic District again, and the committee overwhelmingly agreed that to support the entire, both articles combination, and in fact that it was the number one of all the historical applications, the number one article that we support.
Okay. Kelly?
I agree with combining the articles based off of our discussion at last meeting and this meeting. I read, and forgive me if I'm mistaken, that the 20% was a recommendation. Who recommended that?
I've seen contingencies anywhere from 10% to 25%.
If that's correct.
So,
Yeah, so
It
the
was,
increase was
yeah.
recommended from whom?
well, it was my judgment based on seeing what's been done on other roughly similar projects. This committee felt last time, and I agree, that 10% is too low. Let me just throw out for you to piggyback on that. If I just did my math right, if I put in a 15% contingency, that comes up to 661,000 and change. If I put in an 18% contingency, that comes into 678,500. We're really splitting hairs, folks.
Get the money back if it's not used, so I understand.
Yes, we do.
Yep, thank you.
So,
Okay, John?
No comment.
Kathy?
Okay, I'm still concerned about the windows.
Okay.
So, question, so the existing, double hung windows, I think, what was said a couple weeks ago was that most of them were painted into place, correct? Right now, they're not, they don't open and shut, a lot of them are sealed.
I believe that's correct.
Okay, so what is going to happen when they lift the to do the foundation work? Are they going to take the windows out beforehand? Because there could be a lot of movement and damage to the existing windows.
There's a lot of concern about that. I'm blindly optimistic that won't be the case, but I don't have a lot of experience to base that on. What I do know is the building is not being lifted.
Okay,
It's being pretty much supported in place. Yeah.
so meaning it's not going to be raised up at all?
That's right. So the contractor is saying, we're not going to get that sort of thing that you and a lot of other people are worried about. I don't know, Kathy.
Okay.
I don't know.
Oh, it's a big if. I mean,
The
we've got
capital,
these precious windows we want to restore.
well, we're gonna know after this project is done. This project is starting in earnest on Monday. I'll believe it when I see it, but it's still, that's the schedule. In 3 months' time, we're gonna know where we stand. In 2 months' time, we're gonna know where we stand. We're gonna know before town meeting.
Okay, so then my other concern is the storm windows. The storm windows are not that old on the existing building.
Yeah.
And I don't think it was determined at the presentation, what they were thinking in terms of replacement necessarily. I mean, given the fact that some of these windows are in rooms that are climate controlled and may or may not ever need a window that opens and shuts, the use of a combination storm would be a waste. So I guess without really knowing how much money we're investing in storms, I'm just a little, you know.
I can get that for you before next week if you'd like. I certainly can't answer it, but I believe from our architect, I can get that answer. She went back and forth. I'm sorry, Lynn is not our architect, she's our historic
Right.
specialist. She went back and forth. She said, you know, you can get by with that existing storm window. There is a better storm window. She recommends it, so she's included it in the budget. If we kept the existing ones, how much would we save? I can ask that question and get back to you.
It would be worthwhile knowing, because if, in essence, if they decide not to do combination storms, okay, for a variety of reasons, and they only are gonna have the one glass storm, and then she talked about having a divider because it would look better. I mean, that's crazy to spend all that money for a divider. We can put weep holes in them and it would improve the circulation. Okay, that leads to the question of, you know, if we are gonna have some combination storms, because the rooms are going to be, you know, they're gonna need air circulation, I mean, does that change the usage of some of the rooms? I mean, it's sort of like a domino kind of thing, I guess. I guess I'm just hung up on the windows here.
Yeah, where you're just going, I can't answer at all.
Okay.
As far as what it would cost if we kept the existing storms, that I can get an answer to you for.
Okay, and do you know if they're gonna take the existing storms off before they do the lifting, or are they planning on
No.
leaving them?
Leaving,
They're leaving them.
yeah, that I'm sure of.
Robert?
Can answer a couple things here. I do believe she did mention if you kept the existing ones, she would recommend putting weep holes in them,
Yeah.
just so you get a little bit of
Yeah,
air circulation. And the other point was that I believe, as I recall, most of the windows actually do work, because if you recall, I used to put the Christmas candles in all the windows, and I had a little tab thing. I had to open the window, put it in, and shut it to hold the candle. So they're really, most of them do open.
It's good to know.
They may not stay up, you have to hold them up while you're doing it.
Right, and there's a solid storm, so there's no way to get air, but
Right.
they open. If you could find that out, I'd appreciate it.
I don't recall. Is the building gonna be air conditioned?
It is.
It's climate controlled now.
I always look to Bob at this question, because he really knows the building better than I do.
Were you talking
it
about
is.
updating the system?
Not the current I don't believe that was brought up. The area that would need some possible work would be the new basement area.
Yeah.
That would be the only, but I believe the current system is fully functional and
Well-
would remain.
All I can tell you is Sean Libby for the town feels that our systems are in good shape, and there is going to be some upgrades required on a normal maintenance schedule. We also, as part of this evaluation, this architectural look at the structure, they had a sub, their mechanical engineer, looked at all of the functions, all of the uses of the building, and we have a report on file as to what to do with that.
Okay.
So.
All right. My concern has been, and still is, the windows. I understand Kathy's point of view. But one thing I would suggest to the entire board is, it may, for the amount of money being invested in these windows, to restore them, the inside air conditioning, if the windows don't get open, that is one thing. But between that solid pane of glass and the glass that has been restored is air and is moisture. So I'm not so sure that a double hung, well, that type of window that you, aluminum window you just described, wouldn't be more advantageous in the long-term service of that building, because you can open up the screens and allow the area to breathe.
Which would come under maintenance.
We don't do maintenance.
No, I know that. What I'm
That
saying
was
is
the
it
point.
become a
Anyway, I
maintenance
have
issue.
my,
No,
Said
it's
what?
not maintenance this year.
I'm sorry, John.
Yeah, I'm John. I didn't quite understand your point.
Me either.
Could you repeat it again, please?
The air between the window,
Yeah, I
right
get
now,
that.
it's a sealed area between the old glass and whatever's left of the caulking and the out exterior.
Right, there's a moisture problem there potentially, but you,
And it could continue, because if you don't get rid of those solid pane windows, the moisture is just there. Where's it gonna go? It's gonna,
and the solid
it's gonna
pane
be
window,
cool, contracted, heat up, etc.
are you referring to storms when you say the solid
Yes.
pane? Okay, thank you.
Mary?
So you're suggesting the weep holes might not be enough
Yes.
to deal with the moisture issue,
Right,
so.
that's what he's saying.
So maybe there's a benefit to having the double panes. Okay.
Yes. Carol?
But I just want to clarify, is that what's proposed? Because I thought what was proposed was a different solid
Yeah.
window with a bar across.
I don't think they've decided
I
yet.
haven't decided yet.
No, but that's what I heard too.
But the price, I mean, I would imagine there's a big price difference between that and, you know.
Double hungs.
Double.
Right,
Yeah.
so.
That's why I
the
want more
budget-
information on the storms.
Right, so we should know what
We should
the
know what-
budget
Yeah.
includes, yeah.
Elizabeth?
I just think that regardless of the cost, if we're going to do this and put in the amount of money we're putting in for the new windows, that we should do it right. And if that means new storm windows, then let's put in the new storm windows, so that we're not going to the town in 5 years saying, oh, the new windows are starting to rot. So I think we should just do it the right way. Thank you.
Thank you, Elizabeth. Anything else from any of the board members? Carol?
Can we just clarify the questions we have for David? Because I think it's what type of storm window is included in the budget, right? And what the cost differential would be to keep the existing storm windows. At least those are two questions, I think we.
Let me tell you what I've written down, and you can tell me if I got it right or not. If we keep the existing storm windows, what's the cost savings? By doing that, are there any other implications on changes in construction that we have to address? And from you, Carol, are we exactly what type of window is our historian recommending in terms of double hung versus single glass panel with a bar?
And what's in the budget? What is the budget actually assume is the?
Okay.
Thank you.
Is the board comfortable with that?
Yeah.
Kathy?
Yeah, I mean, as she presented a couple weeks ago, they were not sure what was necessarily
Yeah.
contributing to the moisture.
Yep.
So they really, it's something they need to figure out, but it would be good to have some idea of price.
And I guess I misunderstood, because I understood the pane with the bar was going to be a double hung. That was my understanding of the presentation,
That's what I gathered from them.
was that it was going to
So I
be,
missed that myself.
that was my understanding, was that it was gonna be a double hung so that it could be
I don't know.
opened.
I think there were
And we
two
could pop in
options
the
she
screen.
talked about.
So.
One was just a piece, a bar, so it would look more suitable from the outside, and the other was the potential of a double hung.
And see, and I, what I heard,
Yeah,
misheard, was that the option was to keep the existing single pane and weep it, or put in a double hung. And our question was, was it worth the cost to
Right.
put in a double hung when we could just weep?
I,
So I guess I missed that too,
No,
so.
you didn't.
I don't know.
That's what I get.
Okay.
yeah, I'm not sure.
Yeah, we're not
Okay.
sure, we're not sure.
So, your
Okay.
questions are clear collectively. Lynn is the person to respond, and I will get that for you by next week.
Okay,
Right.
that's great.
Thanks, David.
Anything from anybody else from the board? We're all set? David, thank you.
Okay, thank you all.
Thanks.
Okay, next. It's on the agenda, it's discussion and possible vote. I stuck the possible vote there because I do with every discussion that we do with applications. Before we get into that, there's something I want to inform the board. The vice chair and I had a hour and a half, hour, 45-minute, 2-hour meeting with the finance director, whatever it was. And we got some issues clarified, and we found some more issues. We're not gonna have, I don't believe we're gonna have numbers for our next meeting. There may be a possibility, but I don't think that's happening. We may not get meeting minutes, we might not get amounts of monies to be used from finance until February, sometime in February. Do you want to add any more to that?
Let's just say, I differ from David's opinion in that I think that we can come up with a close proximity that we could work with at the next meeting, if we don't get actual numbers.
Carol?
When you say numbers, do you mean broken out by category that would be available for each funding category?
Yes.
Because I think that's essential for our decision-making,
Yes.
obviously.
Mary?
So for us to come up with our motions, we have to come up with our buckets for this year. We have to apportion the 10% into each bucket. That's one of our votes. We have to vote what we're gonna put in for administrative. And then we have to take our votes on existing money, so what's been certified is certified under the last DOR certification that exists already, and have an estimate of what we think we can spend for estimated revenues for next year. So we need to know what our estimated revenues, what a conservative estimate is, because we don't wanna overspend and then have no money the next year. So I guess my biggest concern is when are our articles due to the Board of Selectmen to be included on the warrant?
I don't know the answer to that question.
So I think that's probably, from my perspective, I understand Kathy's point, but I do think we have a heavy year this year with numbers. And I'd hate to go through the process of voting articles and then see us have to revote them the night before the meeting, before town meeting, because we were off by amounts.
I think we have time between now and town meeting, so we don't have to do it the last minute.
Well, we did.
I know
You and
we
I were on
did.
the board that day
I
when
know,
we
I
had to
know.
redo our motions.
We're not gonna do
An
that
hour
again.
before
We're
town
not gonna
meeting.
do that again.
And quite frankly, this is where the vice chair and I disagree. And as I've told this board before, I will not stand up in front of the microphone and give the numbers to the CPC without having them verified from the finance director. The Board of Selectmen know that, administration knows that, finance director knows that, and I'm not gonna go any further than that.
I'll be honest, I'd prefer to know the numbers so that when we're making motions, we have some semblance of confidence that we can actually fulfill our obligations that we're recommending to town meeting.
Well, that's not to preclude us from debating.
No, and I agree with you on
The
that.
issues.
I guess my expectation was that I was gonna spend the next week sitting down with numbers and massaging numbers and figure out what I thought I would recommend for motions for us, like I typically have done the last couple of years. And without some baseline, I feel that effort would be futile. But that's my 2 cents worth, and you hear my 2 cents worth a lot, so.
John? Thank
So,
you, John.
I've been doing this consistently, right? So my 2 cents are a little different. I don't think they're in conflict with what Mary is saying, but I sat down with my spreadsheet. Of course, there are no numbers to deal with this year, so I just stuck in the anticipated revenue numbers from last year and just looked at what would happen if that's all the money we had. And just to sum it all up in a couple of simple sentences, there's a surplus in open space, and historic and community housing all get used up immediately, and there's a deficit of over $400,000 in the rest of it. And that's also taking the number from last year, I believe, for debt service and keeping it in there. And I don't,
I don't,
so,
John, I gotta stop you there.
Okay.
Because there's more information that's available that I can't
that's fine.
tell the general
But,
public.
and you can't do that, and we have to have a discussion without that information. So to me, this kind of just puts a bound around what we have to deal with right now. And that's all.
Mary?
I appreciate your point, and that's, from my perspective, good information to know kind of where we would stand on last year's numbers. Based on interest rates and based on sales and how it's changed over the last 6 months, I'm not sure that I'd want to rely on just last year's numbers, because I don't know whether our revenue's gonna go up or down, so.
Well, there's definitely gonna be a inflation factor in there. So that number is definitely gonna alter. There's no question about that.
Correct.
Because we didn't have 7% inflation that we're
Right.
dealing with now.
Right.
So,
And aren't we,
Elizabeth,
sorry,
I didn't mean to
Are
cut you off.
isn't the state CPA giving us more money this year than we got last year?
Kathy?
Yeah, can we tell them what the amount is?
If it's correct,
Well, it came from the coalition.
I understand that, but it's different from the document that you and I have.
Yeah, but that's because
Go
that was
into
an
the
old
website.
document. The state's contribution, round three, the 3 distribution rounds, is gonna be about 715,000 for the town of Harwich,
So
which
it's more than we
represents like
typically-
44 point something % of our, the revenue that we take in for the 3%.
That
which is-
seems more than I would have
It is.
It
anticipated.
It
is,
is.
they gave us
It
more.
is.
And knowing it was an
It
increase,
is.
it's still a lot more than I would have expected.
It is, and we're on the higher end of some of the other towns. Now, it's gonna significantly decrease for next year,
Right.
okay? Given that, I guess the town of Worcester just joined the coalition, and they say that when a big city comes in, a lot of
Everything
the
drops.
numbers will change. So we obviously, for next year, certainly would anticipate it being like half, maybe. But for this year, it is extremely high, and it's up to 44%.
Good, Mary.
Did the finance director share with you what our land bank debt is this year? I think we pay it off this year. And I recall it being less.
Mary, we can't approach that subject.
Okay. My point is that's another
got it.
vote that we have to make, so,
Right.
so debating articles next week might be a good idea, but I wouldn't anticipate that being prepared with real numbers would be a smart thing to do. So,
And I don't know how to say to the board that it feels like we're spinning our wheels. Good.
I still think that we can have a healthy discussion about the merits of the applications this evening,
I agree.
okay? So I think that's where we should start.
To the newest member of the board, most of the board members can anticipate and deduce how much of their money we have. You don't have that information. So, at the end of the board meeting, I'll have a discussion with you, and I'll give you an idea, a background of how we get from A to B. It will help, but there's nothing definitive there, okay?
How much
You
fun is
understand
that?
It'll be a treat. It'll be short, trust me. I hate to be put in these positions.
No.
All right, is there anything else from any member of the board right now about this particular topic? So, we're gonna move on. We're gonna talk about OS1 Bell's Neck Herring River Preserve Project, Harwich Conservation Trust for $125,000. Thoughts, aspirations from the board members, starting with Mary?
Hoping to, expecting to be able to support it, let's put it that way. Expecting the money will be there to be able to support. It seems like a parcel that we should protect for multiple reasons, whether we can have bird watchers in there or not. It just seems like it's a no-brainer, so. And it's not a year where, you know, they're asking for $500,000 or $600,000, so hopefully it's money available.
Okay, Elizabeth?
I agree with Mary. It's not a big request. It's their only request this year. And as I said earlier, I love Bell's Neck. And anything that will protect it and keep it the way it is, to me, is critical. I mean, the last time I was there, I saw a bald eagle,
Wow.
you know.
Now I want the bird watcher
Yeah.
platform.
But,
Robin.
you know, you want to keep it, so.
I wish I could. Okay, thank you, Elizabeth. John?
Yeah, so I think I made my feelings known earlier. I think this is probably the most important thing we can do this year. And it's the most uncomplicated of all the things, or maybe not all of them, but it seems very uncomplicated to me. Plus, under any reasonable assumptions about the money available, it's there.
Right.
And it can't be spent on anything else, so I don't know why we wouldn't do that.
Agreed.
Thank you.
Thank you, John. Robert?
I mean, other than my feeling that there should be some kind of public access built in, I'm definitely for this article. I think it's a bargain. That's
Thank you, Robert. You're right on the money. Carol?
Yes, thank you. Yeah, I think I agree with everything that's been said. I think whenever we can invest in protecting pristine habitat, we should do that for all the reasons cited, as well as climate sustainability for another. I tend to agree with John in the comments about, you know, use of this. I think its tremendous value is primarily ecological. So I strongly support it.
Catherine?
Yeah, I mean, I think the reason that the Conservation Commission, you know, sort of came up with the plan that they did was to protect all the interior area from getting in any shape or form manipulated. And I will say that even if there was no funds available, we are getting the reimbursement of the LAND state grant for the Copeland's property, and that will come in probably in June and would be available for distribution July 1. So it would be available. And that's $400,000 into open space. And it has to be returned to the most restrictive account.
Excellent.
Okay, she's nodding too. It is true.
I agree it has to be returned to the most restrictive account. I'm not sure DOR would agree that we could spend it this year, or whether it had to go into a revenue account and be certified for the next fiscal year. But
No, I see.
either way, there's a buck, either way, we have 10% that we have to spend
Yep.
in open space. So to all of your points, there's some money in open space that
We don't have to spend.
we don't have to, but is dedicated
be
for open
allocated,
space.
yes.
Right, it's dedicated to open space. So in the world where there is no other open space
Yeah.
bucket and I find value in it, there should be money available, right?
I'm having a problem with the restricted bucket. I don't remember ever reading that, but I'm gonna
I
go
think she's
find
right
out.
on that.
I'm gonna check that.
I think she
Okay.
is.
Where did
Kelly.
I leave off?
Kelly.
Carol, are you all set?
Yes, I am, thank
Kelly.
you.
I am in support of this project for everything that's been cited and described. And, oh no, I had something else, but I'm blanking.
The senior moment.
The filing cabinet is full.
Better her than me, that's all I can say.
Just kidding.
Oh, I understand conservation restrictions in my profession, and very, very typically, allowing passive recreation is a very, very common, almost standard clause that's included as a reserved right. So I just wanted to add that in case that's comforting.
Robert, am I violating my own rule? Supporting projects,
You're not.
almost a straw vote.
No, we can discuss.
We can discuss, but
You can comment.
there are board members that are expressing their votes.
I thought that's,
But that's what we thought we were gonna do.
Yeah.
No,
I didn't express mine, I just offered
no,
my
we
opinion.
don't express what we're gonna vote for. We have a discussion on the merits.
So I will say, what I said is it would be something that I might support, but I don't, based on the merits, I don't know what the numbers are yet, so I don't know whether I can support anything or not.
Thank you.
Go ahead, Rob.
I thought that was really during when we were having the presentations, that at this point, we're debating these, and I think we can show our
Agreed.
support.
Okay, I'm overthinking the process.
Yes, you
Okay.
are.
My apologies. All right,
Thanks,
moving
Bob.
on. Did I miss anybody?
You didn't miss me, but I have something more to say. Which is
Go, John,
Go
go.
ahead, John.
just a simple thought. Considering that there might be a surplus, I would consider it might be a good idea to give them more than they're asking for. Just throwing it out there. Again, we're not gonna nail any of this down until later, but I wanted to insert that thought.
We can go down, but we can't go up.
What was that?
I don't know that that's true.
Who said that?
We've done this before,
We've
haven't
gone
we?
up before.
We've gone up.
We went up on the Chase Library door because we didn't think
Right.
she had asked for enough and we were
Yeah,
concerned about.
On town meting floor.
No,
Okay.
we did it
No,
here.
No, I'm rehearsing what we.
Yes.
You're absolutely right, we did.
Selectmen,
all right.
in the budget can't go up, they can only go down.
Okay. All right. Kathy,
I already said my
you already
piece.
said your piece?
Yep.
So we're all set
She
on
didn't
this?
express her opinion.
Right.
Gotta be careful. All right, the next one will be CH2, Harwich Affordable Housing Trust Funds. Harwich Affordable Housing Trust request $500,000. This is gonna be a doozy. Okay, I'm gonna open it up with my vice chair.
No. All right, I support affordable housing, okay? I want to say that, okay? What I don't support is the obvious lack of a strategy for moving forward for the use of the funds. And, that's where I have a real problem with this. We just continue to, the discussions that we've had, although I will say in the last 6 months, there's been better discussions. There's been more, I don't really want to use the word transparency, but there's just been more information given to us, and that's been great. But it would be nice to know how the housing advocate is fitting in with the housing trust. I know it's not purely for affordable housing, but they will have overlap, hopefully. And I know they're counting on an action plan that they're putting into place with an outside consultant. But I just don't see a strategy. I hear a lot of talk about, you know, whether they're a fiduciary or they're not a fiduciary, and sort of the difference between that. Are they just gonna, you know, buy and sell property to have a big pot, or is something else gonna happen? I don't know, I'm confused. So I'm leery of supporting, again, a large amount of money with no strategy in place. That's how I feel.
Okay, thank you, Kara. Rob?
Yeah, I have been very supportive of this. I do understand that they need to have some flexibility with the money. I think the 500 is a reasonable ask to build up their things. I did notice, though, that Chatham CPC, what they did is they did ask for a split, in that half of it would go for a buy-down program and then half for new building. And that's one thing I know that they've talked about in the meetings, but they certainly haven't adopted a strategy on how they're gonna use the money. But overall, I'm still appreciative, or I still support this 500,000.
So I understood what you just said. Did that request come from within the Chatham CPC? Or did administration?
I think it was their housing trust
Okay,
submitted 2 different applications.
all right.
You know, it wasn't decided by CPC. I'm not sure if we would have that flexibility, but I thought it was interesting that they do have that it was a clearer defined use of the money.
Got it. John?
Yeah, this is a tough one for me. I fully understand the need. I'm basically, Kathy said it all. I'm not happy about that part. And I don't, it's just a tough call, as far as I'm concerned. I don't know what else to say.
Okay, how's that, John? Elizabeth?
Here we go. Everybody knows that I am madly, passionately concerned about housing. And this is not the way to do it. The Affordable Housing Trust bought $800,000 worth of land, which they don't even know if they are allowed to put an RFP out for, due to the terms of their trust. They do not know what they are doing right now. And as Kathy said, they're getting an action plan. They're getting all this stuff. We have a new coordinator. There is nothing they are going to be able to do with $500,000 in the next year. And if there is, they can achieve it by selling one of the other 7 parcels of land that they currently own. And I think it would be better. There are so many good ideas in the housing world right now of ways to help people directly. There are all sorts of things coming down the pike that I would rather save the money for next year. And then if it turns out the trust does need money next year, great, if they can prove what they need it for. But right now, I feel like we are just putting money in a hole, and it's just not, with no plans, no accountability, and I don't think we should just spend $500,000 blindly this year.
Mary?
So, I understand and hear all of the comments. I too I've been a huge supporter of this from the beginning. I have advocated on for all of these articles. I'm not sure what happened with the parcel that Elizabeth is talking about, why they're not sure whether they can put out an RFP. I will say, they have, at one of our meetings, or at one of the joint meetings with the selectmen, was the first time I heard somebody suggest that perhaps they should sell it, and maybe they should. I do think there are other things that they can do with the $500,000 other than buy land. And I'll be honest, we've had the discussion with the housing authority has your assistance program that's limited. There is no reason that the housing trust couldn't do something similar on their own terms, give more money, do the same kind of situation, could create their own buy-down program. There are all sorts of things that they can do with money, which is why we don't give it to them restricted. I am hopeful. I've been on this board for a long time with Kathy, and I have sat here and listened to Kathy say every single year, what's your plan for your money? And every single year, we haven't really gotten an answer. There has been some turnover, there have been some changes, and I am hopeful that the consultant is finally going to finish the work that they started pre-COVID. I don't know why they didn't finish the work during COVID, because I don't see what the holdup was, but I was on housing committee when it started and sat through a meeting on it. Disappointed myself that it isn't going there, but without money, they can't do anything. With money, they can do something, and maybe it's a rental assistance program that they need to look at. Maybe it's something else. Maybe they need to sell land, but we also know that selling the land isn't going to happen in a month's time. It all takes time, and they need money. And Elizabeth, you sit here and you tell us all the time we need to put people in houses. We need to put people in housing. The less money they have, the longer it's going to take us to do anybody to do anything. I'm still hoping to support it. I don't know whether it will happen or not. I do think there are other things they can do with their money besides being developers. I don't know that was the best choice. Wasn't part of the group, but they bought land. Now they're gonna have to decide what to do with the land.
Carol?
Thank you. Well, I mean, I share the concern of the lack of clarity in the intended use of the funds. I do agree that the quality of information we are receiving has improved from over my short tenure here. I think the hiring of the coordinator and the engagement of the consultant to do some action planning or strategic planning are positive steps. So I am inclined to, see that as movement in a good strategic direction, and to support this request in good faith, and to see how that plays out over the coming year.
All set, Carol.
Yes.
Kelly?
I share very similar concerns with the lack of a budget. I feel that we're not holding this group to the same standards as other applicants, since they didn't include a budget and aren't giving detail or at least ballpark percentages of how this money may be used. But I recognize the need for this work as well, so I'm uncertain of my position anyways, but those are my concerns.
Thank you, Kelly. You and I were around long enough for the leap of faith.
We were.
How many years ago was that?
I don't disagree with you.
5, 6 years ago now?
Was there?
You were there?
Kathy was there the first year. I think you weren't the second year, maybe.
I was there though, so,
No, because she voted it.
yeah, I voted in favor of it then.
It's,
And the leap of faith was before the trust documents were drafted. It was before the trust was created.
I mean,
So-
we went out on a limb.
We did go out on a limb. I don't disagree, and I'm not saying that my own faith isn't waning.
The problem I'm having is, it's one more year. It's one more year.
So here's my
We need to service the community now.
here's my comment,
And we
right?
don't, none of us are sitting on that board.
If the trust, so they're trustees, it's a trust, right? It's its own legal entity. And the trustees are fiduciaries to the money.
But
And
they have not, they're not following the rules of their trust.
We're not
because
the
they're
one, we're
there's
not the ones that can hold them accountable
They're
for that.
supposed to change trustees every 2 years. They're not doing that. Second of all, to me, they have not proven that they are at all capable of spending this money. The Marceline property fell into their lap. And they bought it. And that's fabulous. Great.
Or is it?
But, or is it? But they have no plans. They have no plans for anything. If we tried, I'd love to do a rental assistance program. I would love to set up a system like they have, and I've been learning, every meeting I go to, everybody talks about in Vail, Colorado, they will pay you, a homeowner, as much money as they deem necessary so that your house will always have a year-round restriction on it, so that it cannot be sold unless the person who buys it is going to live in it year-round. That would be a beautiful thing to do on the Cape. I would love to see money go to that. But I'm sorry. I don't.
I'd oppose that at every,
There are lots of other plans
I
that we could
understand.
put money
I'm
to
sorry. Go ahead.
and that we could discuss. None of them are gonna be decided in a year. I mean, look, I just brought up something I think is great. He doesn't. That's gonna take at least a year of meetings, right? There's no reason that the housing trust needs $500,000. They don't know how to spend it in the proper way. And if you want to give them half, maybe, I think it's too much, but I might consider a lower number. But they have never proven in any way, shape, or form that they know what to do with the money.
Carol,
Just for those of who've been on the board longer, what's the historical, how much CPA money has been donated to the trust over its life?
I mean,
We did 500, we did 300, we did 500 a year, we didn't do anything.
Skipped a year.
Yeah,
50 years.
So 1.3.
yeah, and then there was a little bit for housing coordinator in there. I think that's it so far, right?
I think so.
We
And
got the
last year-
housing court.
Was last year one of the 500?
Yes.
Yeah.
1.3 million,
Yeah.
basically, okay.
And again, it started
And
before the trust was formed, along the lines of what we were told was, this is what we're gonna do, we're gonna follow the Yarmouth model, this is how it's gonna be set up. Trust us, give us money now, and we did. By the time we were doing the second round of funding, the trust wasn't fully formed yet. The trust wasn't formed until the fall, when the third application was being submitted. So they were just formed, just had trustees. We're still trying to fill the trustees, and we're asking for their third round of money. So again, it was, my argument to the group at the time was, they haven't been in existence long enough to have any rules yet. For some reason, COVID slowed them down. I don't know why it did.
Kelly,
So of the money that we've given them, Elizabeth, you said that they haven't demonstrated ability to spend it. What have they spent and what on?
Well,
Eight
Like
hundred
Marshall
thousand
they spent 800 and
Something thousand on the Marshall
Thousand
Library.
on the Marceline property.
But they've also done engineering evaluations on other properties
Not
that
a
they.
ton,
No.
not a lot.
No, I'm not saying they have,
Hold on.
but I'm saying they have
Hold
done
on,
other things.
Hold on, I want to continue. The one thing about the Marceline property, it's probably one of the largest pieces of property left in the town of Harwich. So, in my point of view only, it was a good get to buy that piece of land, to use it for housing. The location, everything is, in my point of view, is perfect. What they choose to do, they're the trust. That's up to them. We support them, we gave them the money, they chose to do what they chose to do with that money. Once the money leaves town hall and goes to that trust is in control. We no longer have a stake in the game until an application comes in saying, we want more money. And that's where we are right now. I'm sorry if I cut everybody off. Mary?
Yeah, I mean, I think this is clearly gonna be one of the articles we will have significant discussions over when we actually know how much money is available to spend. And, I'm still hopeful they're gonna come around and maybe come up with other ways to spend their money. But to your point, they made the decision to buy the land, so they bought the land. And now they'll have to figure out what or how they go about developing it.
Carol?
This, is this funding their only source of funding?
No, they get a percentage of the cell tower receipt,
Which is, it's small relative to the,
26, 36.
Yeah, we're the larger
yeah.
contributor.
And
Probably the largest.
So none of the, second rent, the second
No.
rental
No.
money? No, okay.
Anything else from any of the board members on this topic? Okay, moving on. CH3, Lower Cape Housing Institute, the development partnership request was $13,000. So, let's start with,
15?
it
15.
was 15.
see, I
75 and 75.
all right, I got 13
Yeah,
here.
Yeah,
two.
it's a
So
mistake.
that's just a typo.
Typo, that's right.
Right, and it's, the
Oh.
275s were broken up for a 2-year.
Right.
And I just want to remind the board, in the past, when this application has come in, we have funded the $7,500. Just so it's a little historical perspective for the board. We never advance anybody. But anyway, go ahead.
That was going to be my question. I remember voting on this last year. Did we only give them the 7,500?
For the year's work, we pay them we granted them $7,500. Mary?
Was it last year or was it 2 years ago? Because I didn't think
It
we,
was last year that they
was
did
last year.
submit an application.
I thought they had missed a year. I
They
thought they
did.
missed a year.
They
They
missed
missed
a year.
last year.
Last year.
It was
Missed
2 years
last
ago that we voted them the 7,500.
Right.
And I think last year they forgot to
Just
put in an
missed it.
application.
Yeah, last year they did. They forgot.
Carol?
So is there any reason why, I mean, there are other things, like even the Housing Authority program is administered over a number of years, right? I mean, it's not like there's any reason, or I guess a question, is there a reason why it couldn't be funded for 2 years?
Mary?
I guess my thought on it was for the Lower Cape School training that they were doing. So, and they were asking us on an annual basis, and I think as a board at the time, we had just said, we'll fund it this year, but come back to us next.
Carol?
Well, I mean, it's an established, this is for the Housing Institute, which is an established program, I think well-regarded and has had an impact. And, you know, we've talked at length in this room about the importance of affordable housing, and I just don't know why we wouldn't give them the full support.
I'm not gonna respond. I have a response for you, but I'm gonna hold it. Elizabeth?
I think right now CDP is still the main game in town in terms of putting together housing training, getting people to the table. So, I'm happy to support this, and it makes no difference to me whether it's 75 or 15, except on the off chance that it's 75 this year, and next year they want 8. So by locking in a 2-year price, that might be better than taking a shot that it'll be the same next year. That's my thought.
John?
Yes, okay, so it is an established program, and it seems to be a good thing, and it's small money, and I don't, on principle, have any problem with 1 year or 2 years, except if we're up against it this year and have to make choices, that would be an easy way if it makes a difference. It's just limited to 1 year. Thank you.
Okay, John. Robert?
John said it. I'm all set.
Okay. Kelly, there's a reason I'm leaving you for last. I want you to hear
I appreciate it.
for the board so you can better understand.
Yeah, my concern, I think they offer great training programs, and they have. My concern is Harwich's level of participation.
Right.
We have a very low level of participation if you look at the report. And, you know, we talked about it a little bit, and I would not be in favor of supporting them for 2 years, specifically because I want to see what's going to happen this year. What is the difference going to be that's going to, how are we going to approach it so we get more of the people who need to go to this kind of thing to participate? And I also would like to see some statistics about how many people participate, not only just in the first workshop, but in the next 5 workshops, you know, the follow-through. Because a lot of people have taken the 101, but then what happens after that? And so it would be good to know, have all the members of the Affordable Housing Trust participated? Have all the members of the Housing Committee participated? Have all the members of, you know, whatever? You know, I think that we should probably have a few members of the Community Preservation Committee participate if they haven't. So I am in favor of supporting them again. I think that's a worthwhile program. I would only support it for 1 year because I'd like to see and make sure that we somehow work with them to increase Harwich's participation.
No, sir. Thank you, Kathy. I can't put it as eloquent as this young lady just did. I have a little different perspective on it. It's the application I have a problem with, not funding the application for what we funded the previous year for 7,500, but that's a service. We're pre-buying a service, and in my world, that doesn't happen. So I'm not putting a next on it. I want to support them, but not for, if they came in with an application that said, we need $15,000 for a year, I'd have no problem with that application. But it's the manner in which it's being presented to this individual. Now, Kelly, the floor is yours.
Thanks. That threw a wrench into things.
And would you speak up a little bit, please?
Yes. Well, my initial impressions is I do feel this project does have merit, and I feel it's a reasonable ask. But I'm taking into consideration the additional points brought up. That is all.
All set? Okay. Anything else from any board member? Elizabeth?
Just as an aside, I go to a lot of their presentations. I know Joe has been to some. I have never seen or heard of a trust member
But there's been some
attending.
Zooms and stuff like
So-
that, so we can't, you know, we don't know that.
They're never on the nobody's ever on the lower Cape
I'm-
participation. Just want to say.
I hear what you're saying, and I would just like to see what we can do to increase Harwich's participation, that's all.
Would be great.
Okay. Are we all set on this topic? Moving on, H4. Hold on. My screen froze.
Brooks Academy.
H4 and
Yep.
H5
H4,
are
Brooks
now
Academy
together.
Preservation Project, and H5, the window restoration project. The exterior preservation project's 250,000, and the exterior windows restoration project is 440,000.
Now it's combined.
Do the math in your head.
Okay, but it's a revised application.
So, how do we,
Just call it
H4.
H4 and for $690,000.
There we go.
Or call it
Just call H-
4.5.
H4/5,
Yeah, or 4.5.
4.5?
That's the average.
Okay, for how much?
690.
$690,000.
Okay. Open it up to members of the board. Kelly?
I would like to see the questions answered that we asked for next week. So I don't feel up to, discussing further at the moment.
Do you have any general thoughts on the
Okay,
project
Great,
itself?
thank you. Judging by Robert's comment that this was a number one need, I think that the project has merit, and judging by the presentation, I think the project has merit.
Okay. Elizabeth?
I want to see this project through. I want to see it done right. And I'm very hopeful that we will have the money to support them. I would like to.
Mary? Thank you, Elizabeth.
So, I will reiterate what Bob said at our meeting. He asked our board what we would support and what each of us thought individually. And I specifically asked Bob whether he wanted my opinion or wanted me to hold it. This, for me, is the number one historic project. I think with the amount of money the amount of taxpayer dollars that are going into this building to get it right, for me, that has to be the number one historic application. So I'm supportive of it. I'm hopeful that they could possibly recognize some cost savings that didn't appear in the combined application and that we get some money returned, but I'll say it again, it's the bookend of the historic district, and the town owns that building. I don't think the town is ever not gonna own that building. And to that end, the taxpayers are responsible for restoring it and then in the future maintaining it. So,
Thank you for putting that.
yes, so if we can assist in the preservation and restoration, wonderful,
All set, Mary?
all set.
John, I'm sorry. John, go ahead.
Yeah, I see the need for this. I've expressed my reservations before and been told that they're irrelevant. I think they're relevant. I think that putting a lot of money into a building like that without knowing how it's going to be maintained in the future, to me, is problematic. And I know that both the windows and the exterior paint they're not things you just do once and forget about for 10 years. You don't. And so well, I didn't get any answers to how that was being addressed. So it's a concern I have.
All set. Thank you, sir. Carol?
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, I agree, it's a very, I was, I'm persuaded by the importance the commission has given to this application. It certainly is sort of an iconic, visible structure in the town, important to the town's history, so all of that, to me, suggests it's worthy of support. I do note that, and I wasn't present for all of the presentations on some of the other historical articles, but I do note that this is a crowded category, so I think this is one for me where knowing the resources available for this bucket, is going to be important. But I guess that's all I have to say at this point.
Robert?
No, just
Thank you.
continue, yeah, just continue my support for this, and the building is probably our best historically true building in town, and would like to maintain it that way.
Okay. Kathy?
Sorry. I'm not going to repeat everything I said before. I'm going to wait for some further information. But I am concerned with what John said in terms of future plans for maintenance, but I'm also concerned with future plans for usage. Because with the Historical Society, who are the leasees, changing their overall vision almost to be more into sort of the genealogy and that kind of thing. I'm just not, I mean, I don't want to put all this money into something. I know how important it is to the town. I know how iconic it is. But we gotta have use. It's just like, look at the building next door, the Albro House. Still no clear usage except for, one particular department. We can't keep moving forward as, taxpayers and with less and less money and more things to do. Just gotta figure out what's important and really, nail down what usage is.
Also,
Yeah.
Kathy. Myself in particular, I realize what it means to the town. As far as the historic value of that building is concerned. And history's a big deal to me. That's why I sit on this board. So, I'm curious to some of the questions that were asked by some of the members tonight, get the answers to too. And I will leave it at that. So I'll open it up to the board. Anybody else have any comments? Rob?
I can't let this one go. The Albro House does have 2 paying tenants besides the department, so.
Great, we're renters.
Mary?
Thank you, Bob.
I guess my comment is kind of a follow-up on Bob's, not necessarily with the Albro House, but with Brooks Academy Museum. Regardless of who the tenant ends up being, whether it's the town or whether it's Historic Society using it as a museum, the building is gonna stay there. So I think that preservation work has to get done one way or another, and I think the town unfortunately neglected it for way too long. So it's put us in the position where that volume really needs to be spent on preservation. And hopefully with Sean Libby having done the work that he's done now, when looking at the structure and looking at the rest of it along with their bids, hopefully they are putting a realistic maintenance schedule in place. So, I mean, I'd love to know that it's a done deal, but again, I'm hopeful.
To follow up on Mary's comments, again, the CPA Act is there to provide funding for things that the town would not necessarily fund. The taxpayers of the town took that into consideration in '04, voted the CPA into place, and this particular project, along with any of the open space, no matter what it is, there are pros and cons to everything. But a real historic part of this town is that building. Anybody, anything else from the board? Okay, moving on. H6, Revolutionary War Memorial Projects, Howard Cemetery Commission. Request $256,000, oh yeah, right, come on. $256,282.40. I got a phone call from Robin today. She wasn't able to attend the meeting tonight. She said to me that she's still waiting for the Board of Select to get in front of the Board of Selectmen to make the proposal for the amounts of monies that are available from some grant or gift, whatever the case may be. So, let's open this up for discussion. We'll start with John.
I don't really have anything to say about this, but except to ask you what you meant by what you just said. There is potentially money that would reduce this ask, is that?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
She said that the last time she was in front of us.
Okay.
You must have been sleeping, John.
No, it's just a senior moment.
No, that may be the meeting you missed.
No, I
She
haven't-
came a long time ago.
Carol?
Point of clarification then is, can someone recall what that amount would be?
We don't know.
I think
Oh,
we
it's
find-
unknown,
Yeah.
okay.
She was waiting for a clear cut.
And then it would require Board of Selectmen acceptance of a gift in order to be able to happen.
Mary?
So I'm supportive of the monuments in general. I think it would be a nice addition to the new flags and everything else down at the cemetery, and certainly worthy of recognition for our Civil War and Revolutionary War service members. Again, this would probably be 2 on my list under historic asks.
Just-
And I'm hopeful that she gets the money and makes it more feasible.
Offset.
Y-
Rob?
Yeah, and again, the Historic Commission and District did prioritize things, and it did come out as our second most supported project. However, it was mentioned that the real key of this project hinges on, I think, 250th anniversary of independence, and which we have a few years to go to. So it could probably slide a year, but it would be absolutely, it'd be great to have this for our celebration, 250th celebration.
Carol?
I would love to see more other sources of funds brought in to reduce this amount. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Elizabeth?
This is a wonderful project, but it is not at all on my priority list. I think if we have all the money in the world for this bucket, sure. But if not, I would actually put this last, or even second to last. I don't see the timeliness of it. As Bob said, it could probably wait a year. And it's not as big a deal to me as the museum or anything else.
I'll settle Liz.
Yes, thank you.
Kelly?
I believe this project has merit and would honor our history I'm also curious about other funding sources, and possibly if we wait a year, then we might know other options. That is all.
Thank you. Kathy?
Yeah, I mean, again, this is something we could choose to vote a lesser amount if we wanted to. I think it's an interesting point that Bob brought up about the timing. I wasn't aware of that, which is great. I do know that Robin mentioned not just one sole source of additional funding, but that she might even be able to get Brewster involved, because a lot of the soldiers were, the Brewster residents were under the Harwich name, so,
Just from a historical perspective,
yeah.
Brewster was part of the town of Howard.
Yeah, I
Right.
saw the.
Okay.
So that would be great. I do think asking the taxpayers to spend $250,000 on a memorial that's in a cemetery that's not as visible as others in town are, spot-wise, is, might be a little bit of a hard sell. I'm all for recognizing our Civil and Revolutionary War soldiers. That being said, if the cost is more palatable, it's something to consider supporting.
Okay. Is there anything else from any of the other board members? Okay, moving on. H7, North Howard Cemetery Post Rails, revised. Howard Cemetery Commission request $94,600. Is that correct?
Yep.
Mhm.
Yep.
All right, we'll open the board up with Kelly. Put you in the hot seat.
Yes, thank you. I'm curious, Bob, where this stands on your committee for priority.
It is the last
Great.
item.
That's all the question I have at the moment.
Okay, Carol.
So this is considered a restoration? Is that, okay. And given that it's kind of, not to put anybody on the spot, but given that it's kind of a visible location, I'm curious about why it was rated so lowly by the commission.
Just because the other projects were considered higher. The fire station as well as the other two.
Thank you. That's all, thank you.
Okay, Robert.
Yeah, it also is one of those items that can certainly slide another year. I have walked the entire fence. There is a considerable number of bent ones, some kind of subtle, and there is quite a few do have some rust and that are not probably restorable by a simple coat of paint or anything. A lot of the stones are pushed over or leaning or whatever, and those are going to be fixed. I don't think, part of the reduction in price was that it's really just focused on getting what's there restored as opposed to adding any new posts or anything else, which, when you look at it, really doesn't probably make sense because they probably were never there. So that, we definitely think it's a worthwhile project, just certainly not a priority at this time. And particularly in light of other money.
Thank you, Robert. Kathy?
Yeah, so, as you know, when Robin presented this, I asked a number of questions about the railings, et cetera. And Robin is gonna come back next week, but I just wanted the committee to know that I did send Robin a email, asking, just reiterating the questions, and I just want you to know what I asked her. I asked her about the actual number of railings that needed to be replaced, because this application was just like a blanket, let's replace every single railing, and I don't think that's necessarily needed. I asked what the breakdown was between the posts, repair, replacement, and railings. I think she said that they weren't gonna replace any of the granite posts, they may just reset them. What does the actual labor entail to replace the railings? In other words, what needs to be removed, reset, et cetera, per section? I'd be curious to know that, because the labor part, and including cutting the pipe, et cetera, is like $45,000, And are the installers going to dig up the buried railings alongside our road to determine their condition? And that will any pipe laying around now be reused if it's in good condition? Because there's some piping that's down that is specifically corner piping. I mean, it's, you know, cut smaller. They look like they're in fairly good condition. So I guess I'm just curious, instead of a blanket, let's replace every single thing there, what do we really need to do? So before I throw any support one way or the other, I have those questions that need to be answered.
All set, Kathy. John?
Yeah, well, seems like generally a worthwhile project, but seems like one of the most deferrable of the projects. And if we need to defer things, this is a prime candidate as far as I'm concerned. Thank you.
All right, John. Elizabeth?
Yeah, I pretty much agree. I use that intersection an awful lot. And every time I look at it, I think, oh, it does need to be fixed. It's rusty and ugly. However, because this is the most crowded field, I would put it probably second to last on my list, even though it is an eyesore. But I do think it could wait a year. But I'm also, the other information I would like to get before we really decide is, as I recall, at town meeting 2 years ago, we approved this whole West Harwich development plan, that they were gonna do something right there. And that makes me nervous that we would fix the cemetery and then we would be having dump trucks and big trucks coming down that corner and it would get destroyed again. So, for that reason, I think it's a necessary program, but not this year, probably.
Okay.
With the conduit?
It was, yeah, it's something, and then I just remember it because I just remember that they did something. We agreed to something in West Harwich because there was a huge
West
debate
Harwich?
over vernal pools.
Isn't this North Harwich?
This is the
This
North
is in
Harwich
North
one.
Harwich, though.
Yeah.
This was the one on,
It's the one on Depot and,
Main Street.
yeah,
Main Street,
yeah, I thought that was West Harwich. I haven't lived here that long, sorry.
Not a problem. All set, Elizabeth. Mary?
so, along the lines of, with what Bob said, this is towards the end of my historic, preferences. I think it's a project that's got value. We've supported them in the past. The other cemeteries where we have replaced rails do look great. I do not necessarily disagree with Kathy, however, in that we should only be replacing the ones that need to be replaced. And I think her questions have value, and I'll be curious to see what the answers are.
Do you want to follow up on that, Kathy?
No, I was just gonna say, we've only replaced one, we've only funded, at least since 2012, when I've been on this committee, railings.
Didn't we do railing? I thought we did railings at Evergreen.
We did.
correct.
We
Right.
did.
And then we did,
We did them someplace else too.
We
I
did
thought.
well, didn't we vote on Methodist to do it?
Yes.
We did,
But
vote
we
on
did,
this.
that didn't go anywhere. The railings was eliminated, what was withdrawn, the railings.
Okay.
Was it?
Yep, it was just the headstone, gravestone restoration.
Okay.
Okay. I stand corrected. I said corrected.
Okay, so any other
Yeah.
comments from the board?
For lots of cemetery projects, it seems.
Harry? We're all set, we're moving on. Okay, H8, Old Fire Station, 203 Bank, Fire Association, request $350,000. I'm gonna open this up to John.
I don't really have anything
I
to say.
try to share the hot seat.
Yeah, thanks. I'll take my piece. But I don't really have anything to say about this. It seems like a worthy project. It's a big chunk. And I don't quite understand why it's $350,000. Seems pretty expensive to me, but construction costs are up, I guess. And again, as has been said, it's a crowded area, and that is a big chunk. So I guess my feeling is, I gotta wait to see what the numbers are and figure out what I think my priorities are in this category.
All set,
That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Carol?
Thank you. So I'm guessing this was number 3?
Yes.
Okay. You know, I agree, this is obviously the field that has a lot of competition, but, you know, this is an appealing project to me in that it's a very visible location, and I think the building's kind of an eyesore. I think this is charming, you know, kind of a use. It's a different part of the town's history that I think would be very accessible and, you know, enjoyed by a lot of different ages, so I think all of those things.
Thank you, Carol. Mary?
So, along the similar lines to Carol, I think it's an interesting project and it's an interesting way to highlight and showcase the original fire truck for the town. It's unique, it's different. I'd love to see it happen. I don't know if there's enough money this year to make it happen. It is, again, a big ask, so, you know, it's visible. It could draw from any number of different age groups, and it's also going to be an asset to all the money that's been put into the trails next door to it. I mean, certainly it's going to increase it's going to increase the attractiveness of that area. It's would be nice to enjoy a trail that doesn't have a dilapidated building next to it, and one that's restored and you know, has something interesting to look at or look through. So supportive of it, hoping that other projects get additional funding so that this one can come to fruition.
Thank you, Mary. Elizabeth?
This is my big number 2. It's not just for the aesthetics. There are many reasons. Mary touched on a lot. I mean, that's now a gorgeous place to go walk. And the way it looks now, you're not quite sure if that's where you're allowed to park or not. There's a sign, but it's really unfriendly. And it's going to be, that area is Bank Street is our most used street in Harwich in terms of visitors come off exit 10 and they take Bank Street to Harwichport. And I think it's really important to have that be an attractive site. And I also think, I'm looking at their cost estimates, and I think because of what they need to do to it, it can be done soon, but it might be ready for, you know, in a timely fashion. It might be able to be attractive soon. But everything they need to do is exactly what is going to keep getting more and more and more expensive if we wait. So this is really my number 2. I think as Mary said, it's going to be a big draw. Economically, we will get more tourists to stop there, and then they'll walk into town and have lunch, or, you know, it's all about economic development for me, that I think this is a big priority.
Thank you, Elizabeth. Kelly?
I believe this project has merit, and especially because it's benefiting multiple partners. It's in a high visibility location. The trails will draw people to this site, and if this site is improved, it'll draw people to the trails. So it seems like all around good benefit and visibility for Harwich, for residents and visitors. And thank you for that tidbit on where this stands with historic. So that's my comments.
Thank you. Kathy?
Yeah, I mean, I think Bank Street is an important connector between Harwich Center and Harwich Port. I think it gets a lot of visibility. It'd be nice to see the eyesore cleaned up. I would like to see him get a different estimate for the brickwork out front, but that'll be up to them. Seems pretty high for what needs to be done, but I'm sure they'll figure that out. And as much as they're gonna be able to fix the outside, though, they're not gonna be able to put an engine in there until the inside work is done, or at least some of it, and that's gonna be a big, big project. The inside. There may be asbestos inside and some other things. It's just gonna be a big, it's a big project. It's a lot bigger than just the outside. So, might
So
not.
you're questioning whether or not it's gonna come back?
No, I'm not questioning that at all. He said he wasn't gonna come back. I'm just saying that it's not gonna be as quick a turnaround. But I'm in favor of supporting it.
Okay, thank you. Rob, did I get,
No,
I'm sorry.
no, yeah. So, yeah, and I think I really focused on the history of the fire department, and it is kind of personal to me because my father was a volunteer fireman in the late 40s and 50s, and back when they didn't even have radios. My mother was a dispatcher. When they got a call in, they asked volunteers to then call other fire people and stuff like that. And there is other items besides a fire truck they're going to put in there, and I really look forward to showing off the history of our fire department and some of the many colorful characters that have been in it over the years. So, obviously, I'm very supportive of this, and I do think the organization's very enthusiastic, and I think they're going to get right on it and do something very quickly.
Okay, thank you, Robert. Anything from anybody else? Elizabeth?
Just to what Kathy said, I do, and as Bob said, I think this organization is really motivated. And I think that if we give them this money to make it look good on the outside, it will be much easier for them to raise the necessary money to do the inside. And so they won't have to come back to us because it's almost like a matching grant. We show that the town supports the project by making it look good. That will show other donors that it is a supported, important program to the town.
Thanks, Elizabeth. Anybody else? Okay, moving on. R9, Howard Oak Street Bikeways Crossing Lights Project. Town of Howard Administration Office requests $13,000. So, let's go back to the beginning. We'll start with Mary.
Support putting in another crossing.
Thank you, Mary. Elizabeth?
Yep.
John?
Uh-huh.
Carol?
She gave thumbs up.
Oh, okay.
Let the record note, she
Yes.
gave a thumbs
For
up.
the record.
Kathy?
Again, like I've said before, they put in a good application, and they follow through, and they report back, and,
Turn excess.
and I don't have any problems with it.
Kelly?
I believe this is a real need, so I'm glad that they've applied for funding from us.
Okay. Anything else from anybody on the board? Robert?
Yes. I approve.
I'm sorry. Well, you're the historian of the board, pretty much. So, we're all set. All right, moving on. R10, senior softball fields restroom project, revised from, the request was 170 originally. Now it's down to 150.
Right.
Okay, open it up to the board. Let's start with Kathy.
Like I had said during the presentation, I've been down those fields before. I think it's the senior men's league is a great league, but I spoke to somebody recently who participates in the senior men's league about this particular project, and they said, forget about us. They said it's even more important for this, to have this done because of the girls softball league that uses those fields. And they use them a lot. And they said there's a lot going on, and then they really think that the need is there. So,
Thank you, Kathy. Kelly.
No additional comments. In addition to Kathy, I think that the need's been made clear.
Robert.
Yeah, and I approve certainly of this and really appreciate how the teams or whatever put in money towards the town. So I think that's a tremendous plus.
Thank you, Robert. Carol.
Yeah, I'm fine with this.
I was waiting for the, or one way or the other. John.
Yeah, I support this. They made a good case for how busy it is, and just the recent comment about girls softball, it seems like should be done.
Thank you, John. Mary.
And I also will concur, I think it needs to be done, and to Bob's point, you have to give the leagues credit for putting in some money. So, I think if they're willing to put in some money, we probably should be too.
Thank you, Mary. Elizabeth.
Yes.
Okay, anything else from any member of the board? All right, moving on. R11 Brooks Park Tennis Pickleball Court Resurfacing Project. The request is $110,000. So, we started inside, we'll start in the middle. Robert.
Okay. Yeah, at first I had some reluctance because I thought it was more maintenance, but I do understand it really is restoration because of the procedures they have to go to do this. And I'm really certainly been happy with the lights that they put up there, and there's plenty of activity around those courts, and so I am in support of this project.
Thank you, Robert. Kelly.
I think they made a good case. I understand that pickleball is a very, very popular sport, and if we let the deterioration continue, it's only going to be negative experiences. So this, I think, will benefit the town greatly in return if supported. That is all.
Kathy, thank you, Kelly.
yeah, I was happy with Eric's rationale for the resurfacing or the redoing of the courts. It's interesting how you can read an editorial or a letter to the editor or something in the paper, and somebody complains about money being spent on pickleball, but for every one letter, there's 20 that are in favor of pickleball, because it is such a popular sport right now. And other towns are supporting their players, so I think that we should support ours.
Thank you. Carol.
Yes, I support this.
John.
Thumbs up.
Elizabeth.
I really want to support it. I hope we have enough money, because if we don't, I might want to put it off for a year and finish the bathroom at Sand Pond and do the other things. Because my only question about this project is, we gave them money last year to build new pickleball courts. And would it not be better to wait to resurface the existing ones until those are built, and then they'll all be on the same schedule?
I can address it, I don't know if I should,
Yeah,
I'm the chairman.
You should.
No, you
But you're
should,
the
you're also the
representative.
rep.
Okay.
Absolutely should.
As far as the courts themselves, they put, last year, the year before, they put 10 grand into of their own money into the courts to try to hold off the cracking of the courts. If we continue to let it happen, if we wait another year, for example, we could have a mild, it's that crystal ball. We're gonna have a mild year or a severe year later. So water gets in there, separates, cracks, lifts, does more damage. So, in my opinion, it would be well worth resurfacing, because the cost to redo the entire courts
Right.
would be
It's
prohibitive to us
astronomical.
at this point.
Right, okay, thanks.
Mary, I hope I haven't gone over the,
Nope, nope, you know, I feel the same way, I'd like to support it, I'm hoping there's enough money to support it. I think the bathrooms would come first for me, this would be second, but I take your point to deferred could cause greater problems, so.
okay, is there anything else from any member of the board? Hearing none, moving on. The Sand Pond Restroom additional funding project, the request is $35,000. So, we'll start with Carol.
We didn't get any response on the septic system design question, and I would still like to hear about that.
Go ahead.
No, I think wasn't the Board of Health,
Yeah.
when they talked to us, well, that was the response.
Okay, that's not really, you know, I mean, I think the question was, would the town, not would they be required by DEP to do something, I think, okay, that's one thing, but, would the town, opt to, you know, include a measure that was a little bit more protective of water quality, as an example? You know, just to explore what the implications of that would be, and I you know, I just don't feel we got a response on that.
Yeah, and I agree, because I thought one of the questions is, can you put a closed system in?
Yeah,
And we never did get an answer on that part, just that they repeated that, well, I think what I understood is Jay said, oh, we've approved it and it's fine for the pond and don't worry about anything else. But I agree, I don't think we did get a really full answer.
All set, Robert. And did you complete your, okay. John?
Yeah, well, just to respond to those points, there's a lot of talk about IA systems, but I don't think an IA system in this case would have any relevance, because it's phosphorus that's a
Yeah.
problem, and there are no systems that deal with the phosphorus. So it would be nice to hear a response to the question about having a closed tank.
I think that's right.
That seems like a preferable thing. I mean, we're in the middle of a problem here, and this is just,
You're
adding,
talking about a tight tank.
Yes,
what did I say? Closed tank?
Yeah.
Tight tank. Yeah, yeah.
So is a closed system and a closed tank
Or-
the same thing as,
The type,
you guys
No,
keep changing the word.
I know.
it's called having a tight, it's a tight tank.
Right.
Is that what?
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Sorry.
It's all right. John, I'm sorry.
That's all I have to say. I
Mary.
generally support the idea, but I would like to have an answer to that
I'm just gonna
question.
follow up on a question. Tight tank versus fast system, two different things. Tight tank has to be pumped,
Right.
correct? Versus a fast system that has a treatment plant as a part of it. So I will say, when the Board of Health was here talking to us, I took that more as a follow-up to our conversations about Skinnequit Pond, and we talked about having to put in fast systems because of DEP's new regulations. So I took that more towards that conversation than I did towards Carol's questions relative to the sand pond restroom and the septic. So perhaps it's worth sending a message back to Katie O'Neill at the health department and asking for a follow-up.
Carol?
Well, I mean, I think it's really, it's not I mean, I'm not sure the Board of Health would mandate a tight tank, excuse me, in this instance. It's not part of the regulation, but I think it would be, I think the idea was, if there is additional cost, would it be worth it?
Right.
For, in protection of the environment and as an example of, making investments in protecting water quality.
But the problem with that is, we in a sense are mandating that the Board of Health provide a particular service.
We're just asking the applicant to consider a different technology for their waste treatment. And I think the conversation was, if it costs more, would we be able to increase the contribution for that benefit? It's a public benefit.
Okay, I'm kind of confused, but would you send me an email with your thoughts on that? So I can address, if it's okay with the board, so I can get it back to Eric and to the young lady and let them come up with an answer.
Health director,
Correct.
not a young lady.
I'm sorry.
But I guess.
I search sometimes.
I think the question goes to Eric, and whoever's planning with him, his engineer, whoever did the septic plan, to price out.
I thought the health director said she did.
Did she?
Did I miss
Septic
that?
plan?
I missed a meeting, so that may have been a meeting that I missed.
That I don't recall. I don't recall that it was the Board of Health that did the plan. I
Oh,
thought
she
it had.
just said that she, okay, all right, I don't want to come,
Okay. I'm happy to send you an email on that.
please, thank you. Rob?
The other part that started that was that the senior field, they said was gonna be a tight tank, I thought, in that design. So why not do the tight tank, since you're redoing it all at Sand Lake anyways, do the same there? I think that's what I remember.
Again, that's gotta be clarified for me.
Yeah.
Okay. Kelly, did you speak yet?
No.
Go ahead, you.
I recall that Kathy asked at the meeting when we were talking about these 2 bathroom projects about if we put them together, and I wonder if that relates to this take question too.
Whether
if
there'd
it's
be
the
any
same-
cost savings
Right.
by putting in 2 restrooms.
Yeah, and if they're the same, like both have tight tanks, would that also reduce costs together? I felt like the answer that we received from the health director was that they'd look into it, but yeah, we didn't get a concrete answer. No pun intended.
Trying to find it.
You also,
Also,
okay. Kathy,
Well, one, I mean, I'm disappointed that they had to come back for more money, just in the grand scheme of things, okay, number one. Number two, I guess we have a number of questions that are unanswered. And I guess that's what we need to have Eric, either get back to us with next week or somehow send us a presentation requesting the answers to these things.
Okay.
Whether there'd be cost savings, whether a tight tank is a possibility. Since he already put in a request for proposal and it came back and they were monetarily short, his words, and we changed the request to be a tight tank, then they'd have to redo the whole request for proposal.
right.
And is that a big deal? Is there a cost assigned, to that, et cetera, et cetera? So I guess,
Carol, please, the email to me on what you and I just discussed. And I'd like an email from you
okay,
on what your thoughts are. And whatever we put together, I'll get together and have Eric, if he can, make a presentation. Again, so, go ahead. I'll go around the board, let me hear everybody else first. Rob, did I hit you?
Yeah.
John?
Yeah, I just wanted to point out that one of the disadvantages, or one of the considerations with a tight tank is you're adding operating cost.
Yeah.
That's all.
Like what, John?
Maintenance.
having it pumped.
Okay, once a
called
year,
maintenance.
once a year?
No. I don't know, like,
For the
You-
amount of people that go to Sand Pond?
I know,
I don't know
Once a
what,
year,
yeah, I think so too.
yeah. I mean, I don't think we're talking a huge,
well, it's a question that needs to be answered. I don't believe it's once a year. I don't care how many people are coming there. And it's not Red River Beach, right?
right.
But, really? If it's only once a year, then it's not a consideration, I agree.
Yeah,
But
you're talking $150,
that idea
$200.
surprises me.
Yeah, well, see, that,
$150.
I don't know the answer to that question, but what I can say is, the septic system, they're gonna add to the septic system that's there. So,
What do you mean?
well, they're putting in the restrooms. They're about to put in the restrooms, so they think, with this article. So, that pond gets used for maybe 3 months, 4 months
Yeah.
out of the year for the,
Yeah.
so, the added expense, if this is, and I'm not trying to step on, because I don't know how to verbalize it. It's the added expense that it would be to add a tight tank, as opposed to what's existing now, in the relationship to the overall pond, and how the pond does whatever the pond does, with all the phosphorus considerations and everything else.
It's getting,
It's 4 months out of a
it's
year.
getting a new septic system.
Yeah,
though.
it says that, yeah.
Okay, so,
It is getting,
in addition to, the tight tank's gotta be far more expensive.
Maybe it's $10,000 more expensive. Maybe that's worth it to some people in the public.
Is the tight tank more expensive?
I don't
Right.
know, but you don't have to put in a leach field.
Yeah.
So there's no leach field, there's just a big concrete tank.
Yeah.
You're putting a concrete tank in there anyway, if you're doing a normal,
Yeah, but you have to worry about the water levels with that tank. It's not a concrete tank, it's plastic. The tight tanks I've
see, I
seen
don't know
now
what I'm
are all,
talking about.
So,
are all plastic of one form or another. So it's, and you have to worry about the watershed, because you put the plastic tank in, and at some point in time, if there's a serious water problem,
The water
that
table.
unit comes up, yeah.
The water
The
table.
water, it
gonna
rises, the
float.
table rises, and the tank rises with it.
well, you'd probably have a problem with your septic system too, so. So I guess,
Well,
you know,
again,
Okay, it's
but
speculative.
I just wanna clarify, I mean, we asked a question.
Okay.
That's, you know, and it's, you know, and about the feasibility of this, and I think it's worth getting a response on that. So I don't think anyone was trying to mandate anything, but just,
It was a
understood,
question.
yeah.
understood,
Yeah.
fair enough. Elizabeth?
this may all be moot. I don't know if you've been paying attention, but the DEP, Mass DEP, came out about a month ago with, oh, we're doing new regulations and you have to do this, and everything has to meet this requirement. And instead of having 40 years, you have 20. And all these new regulations, watersheds, things like that. And they did at least agree to postpone the final decision until the end of January. But they're pretty serious about going through with it, even though people are furious. So I'm, as much as it would be great to have a working bathroom at Sand Pond, I'm worried that we would agree to give them this money and then find out in May or right after town meeting that, no, actually, you're gonna have to do this, or you're not even going to be allowed to have bathrooms there anymore. I mean, it's really, the DEP has come up with these huge changes.
Well, in that case, then it wouldn't go in because they wouldn't have enough
Right,
money.
they wouldn't be able
And the
to-
money comes back to us.
Right.
So that,
And if it goes in, it'd be grandfathered probably too,
There's-
before the
there's that
regulations.
There's no grandfathering. Every homeowner is gonna have to pay $5,000, at least
I read that.
$5,000.
So, but that's only if the town isn't
Right.
operating under a watershed
Exactly.
permit, which,
Right,
you
in which
know,
we are.
Exactly.
well, which you
Not
are
all
in
of
Pleasant Bay, but the
Right.
town could also apply
point.
for Herring River or anything.
Right.
Yeah, so I mean, which is more likely given the comprehensive wastewater management plan. But anyway, those are decisions to be made down the road.
So what I want to do for the board is I want to get your questions answered and Kathy's questions answered. Does anybody else on the board have anything to add to the questions? So, Mary?
My only comment was that I think that was part of what Katie O'Neill addressed when she was talking about the new regulations, was that
She didn't have a
ultimately,
crystal ball.
she didn't have a crystal ball, and ultimately Board of Health still does the local permitting, so they would obviously be involved in whatever happened. So if DEP is gonna make a decision as fast as Elizabeth is saying, we're gonna know more by the time town meeting happens anyway, and by the time funding's available, so. I think personally think we could still consider the article after we get our new information and still make a recommendation one way or another.
Kelly?
I just want to make sure that we get the health director back, even if it's in addition to Eric, because I recall when we first had these questions for Eric, he wasn't really able to answer them himself.
They're gonna be, I can't guarantee you that. I will do my best.
All right.
And maybe the conduit would be Eric asking the question. That's why I want the questions in writing.
Right.
Asking the questions to the health director and her providing the information to him, if she can make a move.
Yes, that works.
Will that satisfy your
Yes,
request?
yes.
Okay. Anybody else? Okay, moving on. R14, Skinnequit Pond remediation project. The request is $92,000. Now, I'm gonna make a request. Mary, if one of the board members is in the butter to this property and is gonna make a decision on this, should they recuse themselves or not?
So I can't tell John whether he should recuse himself or not. I mean, he's gotta make that decision. It's really where, if this is going to provide a different financial benefit to John than the average Harwich taxpayer, then my suggestion would be you recuse yourself. But-
Okay, so it's
but
not,
that's a
it's not
decision
up
for-
to the chair to make
It's
that
not,
decision.
that's a
It's up
decision
to
for
the
John to
individual
make based
that
on
decision.
John talking to state ethics, and they can assist him with that decision.
Okay, all right, fair enough.
I'd like to
Sure.
make, excuse me, what I propose to do is recuse myself from the vote. What I'm a little uncertain about is I would say rather well informed about the details of this proposal and conditions on Skinnequit Pond, and I would like to be able to at least answer questions and weigh in when I think things are being said here that I believe are incorrect or need clarification, let's put it that way.
So I would say, generally speaking, when someone is, and Carol, correct me if you disagree with me, when someone has an interest, if you had an application before the board, you could speak on your application. You wouldn't act as a member of the board, you'd speak on your application.
Right.
So you can certainly give information that you feel is necessary. I don't see why that would be a problem, but I would still suggest that when you're doing anything, if I were you, I would call the attorney of the day at the State Ethics Commission, tell them who you are, what you are, tell them that there's an application before the board, and give them the details, and then they will inform you as to what they think you should or shouldn't do. Whether you need to file a conflict of interest with the town clerk's office, whether you should recuse yourself, they will be able to better inform you based on the facts and circumstances.
Okay, perhaps after this meeting, you can give me more specific instructions about exactly who I would call to get this
Sure.
information. Because
We'll get you the phone
I
number.
don't want to run into a problem here, either for myself or for the committee or for the proposal. So I would just assume,
Okay, so can I make a request of the board member that he's not gonna participate in this discussion tonight?
You can request.
Because
He's not voting. We're not
I'm
voting.
not gonna
we're
vote.
not gonna
It's
vote.
still participation.
I'd rather,
But
I'd rather,
I want to ask him a question, so why can't he, since we're not voting and
Hold on,
this is
hold
not
on.
a definitive, why
Joe.
can't we ask him questions?
can I make a request of you?
I don't
Would you
think we-
sit in the audience? Then,
Sure.
as in the audience, you're not a board member, you're a taxpayer of the town of Harwich, and if the board has questions, we have the ability to ask in the audience.
Sure.
Would that suffice? Or am I stretching the hell out of this?
So again, John, so it's all about John protecting himself. It has nothing to do with the rest of us.
It's
If,
perception too, it's,
it is, and that's my point. If any board member falls, if any town employee, be it volunteer, be it regular employee, falls afoul of the state ethics laws and rules, they are subject to fines and penalties. So I would, that's why I'm not saying, I don't think any of us should tell John what to do. I think John should seek advice.
oh, but Chair's not telling him what to do. The chair's making.
You did, you just told him to sit in
No,
the
no.
audience.
Chair made a request. There's a distinct
You're playing
difference.
semantics with me, David.
Okay.
Yes, I am. John, I'm sorry, Rob.
May I just comment, can we just hold this one till next
Yes.
week and let John just get a
Do what he
clear-
needs to do.
do
That
what
is
he
a better
needs to
idea.
do,
That's
and-
fair.
Yeah,
It's a
It's
much better
really
idea.
not
To the
hard.
board, to the pleasure of the board?
Yes.
It's a much better idea.
Okay, all right, done deal. Okay, we'll hold that to next week. Thank you. Rob.
Okay.
It's really not hard. We had this at the committee, at the county, with the ARPA money. There's been debates about if an assembly member is, or commissioner was on their town select board, could they vote on ARPA? And it's a phone call, so it won't, it's not a scary thing. And it doesn't take 2 tons of paper.
it's not a root canal.
Okay, so
Exactly.
let's, we're moving on.
That's it. Oh, applications.
Right.
Okay, so, old business. There's nothing here.
Sorry, did we discuss R13?
R13
That
is
was
gone.
There is no R.
There is no R13.
R13 was removed.
Withdrawn,
Sorry.
it's all right. Along with, yeah,
Yeah,
yep,
other business.
okay.
Old business.
Moving on. Anything under old business? The only request I had was, and I spoke to Elizabeth earlier, was to find out if there has been any contact made yet. Elizabeth, do you wanna?
I agreed to use my husband's connections with Cape Cod Tech to find out who to talk to and what the procedure is for having their students provide our flyers and signs, and see how that would work, and maybe have a
Contest?
design. The main thing would be have a design contest, which would be cool, instead of paying a graphic designer an outrageous sum of money to come up with a pretty picture.
Okay, so details to follow.
Yes.
Okay. Is there anything that anybody else on the board would like to discuss tonight? John?
I just want to give an update on online applications. I have discussed with Sarah Eaton, who is the new IT director in town, details of what's available now in the software now and the plans for what she's proposing to the town for upgrading the software systems. And I've also talked to Caleb a little bit about just how to get an online form up and going, and so I've started mocking the thing up. I hope to have something to share with the committee, maybe next month, so we can have a discussion in earnest about what this would actually be like and what committee, how the committee would like to proceed. My objective is to have something ready to go live in whenever, June or July, for the next round.
Okay, any comments to that? No? All right, thank you, John. And you might be interested to know that the Recreation Department is gonna be on video.
Oh,
They've never done it before, and now they're putting the process together. So they're gonna have meetings like we
oh,
have here.
cool.
So, technology is moving forward, my friend.
It does, whether anybody likes it or not.
Okay, is there anything any of the board members would like on the agenda, other than the questions from Carol and Kathy about Sam Pond? Is there anything else?
And your questions for the health director.
Right, okay, yeah, I'm including that in the,
There was Sand Pond and there was, one other thing had a
Brooks
lot.
Academy Museum, David was gonna get us more information
that's
on the
right.
windows.
That's good, yeah.
We also
Windows.
have Robin coming back with more information too, right?
And Robin. Yeah. So those three on the agenda for next,
And then Skinnequit,
Yep.
because we'll know by next week what John's limitations are.
okay. Oh, this is already posted?
I had posted,
Okay.
and we can amend it.
No, relax, I got it.
You just have
Yeah,
to
we'll
amend it.
Just amendment, yeah, amend it, yep,
That's why I asked the question.
I got it. All right, so, nothing else on those three? Is there a motion?
I move to adjourn.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
I like how you both do it at the same